Yo, what is going on, guys? So on today's episode, we have a video here titled Why 10 Million Men Have Given Up on Work. So not only these days are a lot of guys opting out of the dating game, they're opting out of things like marriage, but also a lot of men are opting out of participating in a society that doesn't actually give a damn about them. Okay, back in the day, men used to work really hard to provide and care for their families and their communities. But these days, there's not a lot of things for men to really go out there and work for. So let's jump right into this video. Don't forget to leave your thoughts and your comments.
4 years ago, America and the rest of the world saw its most intense spike in unemployment in recorded history. In today's news cycle, that is ancient history. But what isn't ignored is what has been left behind. There are now over 10 million people, mostly men in America, who are not working, not studying, not retired, and not institutionalized. They are just doing nothing. COVID accelerated this trend, but it's been going on for decades. Since the 1960s, about 0.1% of American men have given up on work to never come back every single month. So why are so many people giving up so consistently? And more importantly, how are these people surviving without a job in this economy?
In October, Mississippi's labor force participation rate was nearly 54%, while the national rate was over 62%.
How many jobs on these two websites?
It's been over 1,000 combined.
They're not working and they're not looking for a job, and those are the folks who we have to get into the labor market.
Why aren't some Americans getting back to work?
I think a lot of guys are also doing work that is remote these days, right? A lot of guys are choosing to try and leave these Western countries. They're not looking to work for a company that doesn't give a damn about them in an area that doesn't give a damn about them. Okay, so a lot of these guys, what they're doing is they're saying, hey, I'm going to leave. I'm going to figure it out on my own, and I'm not going to participate in these areas that quite clearly don't want me. Particularly, a lot of areas have really turned towards womanist and woke propaganda garbage in their workplaces, right? I know dudes, for example, who are in the workforce, right, and they're in female-dominated areas, and let's just say it's not altogether pleasant, right? One wrong move, and all of a sudden your career's gone, things like this. So not only are there lots of areas like this where dudes just don't want to participate in, but also these companies don't really, there's not a whole lot of corporate culture these days that really has to do with communities, right? A lot of it, someone comes in, they buy out the company, and then they have no sense of actually really giving a damn about the company a lot of times. And dudes are just kind of left high and dry, right?
It's the million-dollar question.
There are a lot of reasons why someone might not participate in the labor force. They might have retired, they might be still studying for qualifications, there might be people who are too sick to work, stay-at-home spouses, members of the military who are clearly working but don't officially count as part of the labor force, and then of course there are just really rich people who don't need to work to maintain their lifestyle. These groups have always existed, but there is a new group growing alongside them, which are people who have just given up. The fastest growing group of these labor force dropouts have been men between the ages of 25 and 55. Men in this age range would typically be in the prime of their careers, but more and more of them are not working at all.
Yeah, and not only that, these guys, right, these men who are choosing to walk away and refuse to participate in society, these are the backbone of society, right? That age demographic right there, 25 to 55-year-old men, I think society is going to learn the hard way as this effect increases and as a lot more men decide that it's not worth it. But these are people that you probably really wanted to keep around, okay? Those cushy office jobs and things like this, you know, let's just say they're not really the meat and potatoes of the workforce, okay? There are a lot of things in society that we can do without, a lot of services that we can do without, but a lot of the things that 25 to 55-year-old men do, particularly the physical labor, I mean, good luck maintaining a society without that. You see what I'm saying? So a lot of these guys opting to no longer participate. And again, guys, I really want to harp this back to the point, okay, that a lot of men are really not given a reason to do this, right? What are you going to do? You're going to go out there, you're going to work your 9 to 5, barely, you know, be able to pay rent, I guess. And then what, right? You're going to have a family in this economy. with a lot of, not only is the inflation absolutely ridiculous right now, okay, but are you really going to find a quality woman in Western society, right? One that doesn't go out clubbing, doesn't want to do all this crap on Instagram and things like this, someone who you can actually build a long-lasting relationship with? I mean, the numbers are getting slimmer and slimmer by the day, right?
Now, some of this can simply be explained by the fact that more women have entered the workforce. In fact, up until 2008, women were entering the workforce almost as quickly as men were leaving it. Some men just took on domestic roles as stay-at-home husbands while their wives or partners focus on their careers instead. According to Pew Research, young women are now earning significantly more than young men in most major cities in America.
You know what's funny about this statistic as well, guys? This kind of lines up with a few articles that we covered a little while ago here on this channel, right? Where a lot of women are considering men to no longer be, quote unquote, economically attractive. I think that's the wording that they used, right? Economically viable partners. And a lot of women consider it dating down to earn a dude who earns less money. So the funny thing is, a lot of these women are actually completely screwing themselves, right? They go out there, they work their six-figure job. And of course, these women who work their six-figure jobs, they're in nice positions and things like this. They don't want to date dudes, particularly long-term, right? They don't want to have long-term relationships with men that don't earn more money than them. So you have, you know, women are kind of getting screwed over a bit here because they refuse to lower their standards in terms of their monetary requirements for men. So their dating pool has shrunk at the same time as men walking away from not just the jobs, but a lot of women in general as well, right? And this whole thing of men becoming stay-at-home parents and stuff like this, let's be honest, guys, a lot of women don't want the dude to be the stay-at-home person, right? They don't respect men who are the stay-at-home people. They don't respect the guys who are staying home looking after the kids and stuff like this. Like, let's be really honest about this, guys. They don't like men who fall into the traditionally feminine role, right? They'll say, oh yeah, I want to earn all this money, but they don't want to be looking after a guy. Point in case, guys, not a lot of long-term relationships you see are women looking after men in the long term, right? And if you do come across those relationships, typically they've expired, right?
Earning significantly more than young men in most major cities in America. Young women are also graduating college at higher rates than men. So it makes sense that a growing group of men are tossing aside typical gender roles and doing work that doesn't get counted as typical employment. If this were the whole story, there would be absolutely nothing wrong with this. But let's be honest. Having a stay-at-home parent, no matter what gender they are, is a luxury that most people simply cannot afford in the modern age, especially young people who are the fastest growing group of labor force dropouts. There is something more going on here. Nicholas Eberstadt is a political economist who published the book Men Without Work, which tracked the trend of working-age men simply giving up on work and largely removing themselves from society in the process. His book, which was first published in 2016, lines up perfectly with a 2022 study on the issue conducted by the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston, which found that men without a college degree in particular were dropping out of work because their earnings power was significantly lower than their peers who did have a 4-year degree. That's not unusual, because college-educated people should expect to earn more than non-college educated workers on average. But the finding found that the gap between the two groups had widened significantly, especially amongst college-educated versus non-college educated men. Now, this was particularly surprising to the researchers because it would actually make more sense that higher income workers would drop out of the labor force, because if they are earning a lot of money, they have a better chance of marrying a higher earning spouse or just saving up more money for an early retirement. Instead, they found the opposite. The group that earned less were more likely to drop out of work. And yes, before you ask, the study did account for the fact that people not working won't be making an income, so they would automatically be in the non-working low-income group. Now, since men are now overrepresented in non-college graduates, they were the largest group of people giving up on work. But even though it's tempting to make this an entirely gender-specific issue, and to be honest, it would make for a more engaging YouTube video, there are some bigger forces at play here. The reason that people with lower incomes were dropping out was simply because they had less to lose and more to gain. Most unskilled jobs cannot buy you a comfortable lifestyle basically anywhere in America anymore. And as more people tie their identity and social status to their work and income, it's become much harder to accept unglamorous service positions. If you were given to
I don't think a lot of guys really have an issue with their position being unglamorous, right? Traditionally, dudes have done a lot of these jobs that a lot of people consider to be lower positions, right? If you look at things like, for example, plumbers and all of these people who maintain critical infrastructure, these are really, really important jobs. They're not glamorous at all, but traditionally speaking, dudes would oftentimes go into these fields. Okay, I think a lot of the reason why dudes are giving up these positions, like if you have a man who's not earning a lot of money, he might sit there and he might think to himself, okay, screw this. Why am I working for this employer when I get paid screw all? And then it's going to take me, hell, I'm not even going to be able to afford a house in my lifetime, essentially. Yeah, you're telling me I can go out there and work a job that's going to be a pain in my backside, earning next to nothing. And after many, many years, I'm going to get enough for a house deposit. And then I'm going to owe tons of money to a bank. Like, I'm never even going to own one thing, right? This is the problem, right? When you give dudes situations like this, when you give men a choice, hey, do you want to work your entire life and own nothing? A lot of guys are going to say, screw you, I'm going to play my PlayStation. And that's just the end of the story right there, okay? Same thing with marriage, same thing with these long-term relationships. If you say to a guy, hey man, do you want to have a long-term relationship with a woman who's been with 50 dudes and expects, and you have to provide and care for her, but she still wants to go out clubbing? A lot of guys are going to say, no, thank you. I'd rather just not do that. I'd rather be by myself. I'd rather work some remote position or go do something else entirely. I don't want to be in this situation.
Two options. Honestly, consider which one you would choose. You could scrape by working a few minimum wage jobs where you are on your feet dealing with customers and managers all day. A job where you are unlikely to advance too far without a degree, and you won't have much time or energy left at the end of the day to pursue side projects. You might also be working a job that you aren't exactly proud to share with your friends, family, or romantic interests. The other option is that you could scrape by on whatever government programs or family support you could find. Maybe work on some side projects in your spare time, or just fill your day with low-cost recreation like playing video games. I would like to think I appreciate the value of a hard day's work, but I have always had the luxury of a prestigious career and successful business. Given these specific options, how would you choose to spend your day? If you are brave enough, go ahead and share it in the comments below, so people on the internet can call you a bootlicker or a lazy zoomer respectively. Now, the second option also has the advantage that if someone asks you what you do for work, you can just tell them that you are working on a new business or taking some time off. The Fed study found that this was one of the biggest reasons people didn't want to take on jobs that they thought were beneath them. Now, no matter what side of the fence you are on, this issue affects us all. These millions of people are out of work at the same time as we have major issues with worker shortages in our most important industries.
Wow, what an absolute shocker, right? So all of the dudes who are 25 to 55, well, not all of them, obviously, but a good amount of these dudes are deciding to opt out. And wouldn't you have it, guys, we have labor shortages in critical areas. Who would have thought, right? When the dudes who are quite literally the backbone of society decide to leave, it's almost like we have critical labor shortages, right? We've got all the people in the cushy office jobs using their college degrees, totally fine. And I'll say this on the college degrees thing as well, by the way. A lot of these college degrees are completely damn useless. I would argue that's probably why the discrepancy between earnings is a lot higher for men, because dudes are a lot less likely, I would assume, to get those useless, social sciences, quote unquote, as it were, degrees. You see what I'm saying? Like, a lot of these guys who are going to college degrees, compared to women at least, they're probably going there for something a little bit more important. These guys go there for the STEM fields, typically science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. These are things which, tend to benefit a lot more from a degree than other very, very useless areas of study do. So no crap we're having labor shortages of critical infrastructure,
Apart from a few early retirees that made a lot of money at a young age, most of the people who are not working and are not looking for work are living extremely basic lives. Eberstadt's research went beyond the broader demographic studies and focused a lot on trying to figure out what these people were actually doing with their time. Now, the next few minutes are going to contain some hard-to-swallow pills, and even though Eberstadt is sometimes a bit direct with the way he lays out the facts, his research and his recommendations address some of the most important issues in our society. He found through national surveys that the average man not in work or looking for work was basically doing what you might expect. They were sitting at home, spending a majority of time behind a screen. Most of them contribute very little to looking after other members of a household, and they were underrepresented in other civic activities like volunteering, even though they had more free time than their peers who worked or studied. He also poked holes in the idea that a lot of these men had just become stay-at-home spouses taking care of chores to support their working partner, a role that was, in the past, typically performed by women. Unfortunately, according to the federal survey data he collated, the average labor force dropout spent an equal amount of time on household care as the average employed woman, and 5 minutes less per day than the average unemployed man, who would theoretically be spending at least some of their time looking for a new job. What they were spending their time on was leisure activities and sleeping. The average person who had dropped out of the labor force was also far less likely to have children or a partner, and Eberstadt theorized that there were 2 reasons for this. The first reason was that children, dating, and a family life are expensive commitments that people trying to get by without a job just simply wouldn't be able to afford. The second reason was that people with a family to support were inherently more motivated to go out and provide, even if it meant working a job that a single person wouldn't.
Here's the thing. A lot of these guys who are chilling at home, maybe they're playing video games and things like this, maybe they're hitting the gym, they're not particularly going out. The reason why a lot of guys are opting for this kind of life is because the society in general doesn't have a lot to offer them, right? Back in the day, I mentioned this particularly in the intro, okay? But back in the day, if you were a dude, you could go out there, you could work really hard, and you could actually get somewhere with your life, right? And not to say that you can't do that these days, of course, but with things like inflation and whatnot, it's looking a little bit less likely, shall we say. You know, back in the day, you would go out there, you would work really hard, and at the end of the day, you would have a family and you'd have somewhere to live and that sort of thing, right? These days, you can have 2 people working jobs, you can have a man and a woman working these jobs and still be kind of struggling depending on where you live. Okay, and so what? Are you going to throw a kid into the mix there? Are you going to, you know, and a lot of these relationships, mind you, as well, they don't really benefit men. Okay, the attitudes, particularly of women in Western countries, guys, are just not really feasible for relationships. Okay, this is why a lot of guys are choosing to not only just dip out of traditional lines of work, shall we say, but a lot of these guys are also choosing to leave their countries. Right? A lot of these guys are going to Southeast Asia, they're going to the Philippines, whatever the case may be, because they don't want to participate in this society in general. A lot of guys will just say, listen, screw this, I'm going to stay at home and I'm going to play Elden Ring, right? I'm going to work on some hobby or some side hustle. I'm going to try and make that work. I'm going to make my bread, and then I'm going to leave and I'm not going to come back. And you know what, guys? I don't fault dudes for doing this. I really don't. You see a lot of the attitudes of the people in modern day society, and dudes don't have a lot of reason to interact with them. Like, yeah, bro, let me go party every weekend. Let me get a girlfriend who's a degenerate. You know, absolutely not. Guys, a lot of them are just really not interested in the path that society has laid out for them. Mind you, as well, in education these days has essentially just turned into indoctrination camps, okay? A lot of these places are womanist run. They don't like men. And so if you expect men to go through college institutions and stay there, you've got another thing coming, man. You really do. Throw men into an environment which doesn't like them, they're not going to stick around.
Of course, this is a large sample size, and there are plenty of people with children who don't work and plenty of couples totally outside of the labor force as well. But even without these typical responsibilities, daily life is still very expensive. Government benefits for people out of work typically only extend to those people who are either actively seeking work or cannot work because of an illness or disability. The exact makeup of these assistance programs varies state to state. And of course, outside of America, different countries have different levels of social welfare. But America is where this trend has been most pronounced, and it's also where a bulk of the research on this trend has been done. So as anybody who has ever tried to apply for government welfare in America will tell you, the burden of proof to qualify for these payments can be exceptionally high, with the only real exception being COVID-era stimulus, where arguably the burden of proof for payments was too low.
I'll tell you what, guys, here in Australia, the burden of proof in order to qualify for a lot of these government assistance programs where you essentially get money for being disabled or for studying, the thresholds are not that damn high. I don't know how it works exactly in America, but there are plenty of people over here, guys, who essentially just lie their teeth off, and they get into these government assistance programs for absolutely nothing, right? And they get paid out by the government, and they do jack all, right? And that's just the way it goes in Australia. I don't know how this particularly works in America. Again, it seems like burden of proof is placed upon the person applying for the thing in both situations, but here in Australia, the threshold for this is not that damn high.
Burstat did find, though, was that it had become much easier for people to qualify for disability payments, which in most circumstances do not require recipients to be actively looking for work to maintain their payments. In his own book, he highlights how difficult it was to find consistent data on all of the government programs that might be available to these people. And of course, needlessly pointing the finger at assistance to some of society's most vulnerable people is not the point here. What is, though, is that according to data from the Department of Social Security, annual disability insurance payments have outpaced all other major programs. They provide the data as a table, but here is a nice visual line chart. Dr. Dwight R. Lee, an economist, also proposed that a major element that Eberstadt overlooked was that a lot of these men were working. They were just doing it in the underground economy, which was estimated to be contributing about $2 trillion, or about 12% of US GDP. This could include these people doing anything from working informal cash jobs to skirt tax and minimum wage laws to outright illegal operations like shoplifting or selling drugs.
Yeah, see, this is exactly what I was talking about with a lot of guys just doing things, you know, remotely, for example, right? Doing these jobs, these side hustles and things like this. They just don't want to touch the system in general. Surprise, surprise, guys, a lot of men are not interested in having their money stolen from them, right? The government is absolutely, depending on, I know America's really quite bad with it, but depending on where you live in America, a lot of these states just, man, they just steal your money.
Correct!
Have you guys noticed that some of my videos have gone missing over here on YouTube? That is because I am slowly moving them over to locals where I can actually host them without the risk of getting in trouble. If you are not aware, many creators are starting to move over to places like locals, Rumble, etc. because YouTube is not really a free speech platform. So if you are interested in supporting the channel and getting access to videos that are no longer available here, make sure that you come and join us over on locals. The link will be in the video description down below. Supporters get access to their own exclusive videos that are no longer available to the public. So make sure you go to the link in the description and join us over there now. But anyway, guys, back to today's episode. So, I mean, it's no wonder to me why a lot of guys are working these side hustles and contributing to the quote-unquote underground economy, as this channel puts it. Because dudes don't, why would a dude want to work and then have to give away like 40% of his income instantly to somebody who doesn't even care about them? You see what I'm saying? So dudes are going out here, they're working these remote positions, they're working these cash jobs, things like this, and they don't want to touch your society. They don't want to have to report to a government institution every 2 seconds to be robbed from. They don't want to get married and lose all of their crap. They don't want to socialize with a lot of the people in their areas, because quite frankly, I think a lot of these men don't even relate to these people. You know, I see a lot of the behaviors and things on TikTok, man, and I don't relate to it at all. I think it's just damn cringe. And I think a lot of dudes probably feel the same. They watch society go to hell in a handbasket and they don't really want to participate in it.
Informal cash jobs to skirt tax and minimum wage laws to outright illegal operations like shoplifting or selling drugs. So the work of these researchers paints an image of this growing group of individuals mooching off friends, family, and the government, while wasting their days away playing video games or being an overall burden on society. It's not
I love this. He's pulled up a clip of this guy playing League of Legends. This is what I'm talking about, man. Dudes would rather play a video game than to participate in society. And it's hard for me to point the finger at men because I don't think society incentivizes men to participate in it whatsoever.
Away playing video games or being an overall burden on society. It's not exactly flattering, but to be fair, there are certainly people living these lives, and with nationwide or even global demographic trends like this, broad strokes need to be made. The researchers studying this trend are actually highly sympathetic to the situation of these people, and they seem motivated to actually fix the cause of these problems. I will of course be leaving a link to the full book in the video description if you want to read it yourself, as well as some great interviews these men have done that lets them articulate their grim feelings in a way that's a bit more human. The reality is that I can personally see if just a few things went differently in my own life, I could have easily fallen into the same comfortable trap. Most of you watching could have too, whether you realize it or not. But this still doesn't answer the most important question. Why is this becoming more common? Most people, if given the choice, would prefer a nice stable job with an income that could provide a standard of living beyond basic survival. But yet, more and more people are dropping out of even trying to look for a job every single year. There is unfortunately no single answer as to why people are giving up, but there are some contributing factors. Firstly, competition for good prestigious jobs have become far more fierce, while pay for basic jobs has not kept up with living costs. Technology has made it much easier to isolate oneself from the rest of the world, and there are other broader social issues like the opioid epidemic that at the very least have not helped this trend.
Yeah, see that thing as well on the rates at which people are paid compared to the living expenses these days. I mean, this is inflation, right? This is inflation happening right now. I mean, look at this, right? Average home values is in the light blue here. Median household income in the black, and as you can see, it's not even damn close, right? There's a very slight correlation. You can see it ticks up here at the end at the same time that the house is re-peaking, but it doesn't matter nearly enough, man, right? You expect dudes to go out here and work these jobs for their entire damn life to not even be able to pay off a house. So you're telling me that dudes don't even own a single damn thing? It's not happening. Also, particularly with family and things like this, there are so many cultural attitudes that are being perpetuated right now that I would argue honestly make the situation relatively unfixable. Mainstream media most definitely has an agenda to screw over masculinity and to be honest, make women as well head down some pretty dark paths that I don't really see it turning around. I absolutely don't, right? You see these movies and things come out that just try and brainwash people to think a particular way, and it just isolates people from one another, okay? Like, why are dudes going to go out here and engage with other people when you have quite literally mainstream movies and things like this demonizing them every single day? Like, it's just not happening, man.
Pay for basic jobs that at the very least have not helped this trend. One of the most damaging factors has been the insidious myth of the skills shortage, which has led to an economy where millions of people don't have a job, but there are millions of jobs that don't have people to fill them. I am going to be writing an article about how the idea of a skills shortage has been used to undermine the traditional career path of millions of Americans over on my free email newsletter linked in the video description. Something like the rise and fall of the tech bro is a clear demonstration that even the most talented and driven workers have less control over their careers than they might like to admit. So if you like this video, check out that one next to keep on learning how money works.
Right, so the TLDR of this particular video is a lot of men are choosing to opt out of society. They're choosing to not participate in these jobs, and they're just playing video games, or they're doing side hustles and things under the table. And this is all to be 100% expected. This is from the age demographic, the video says, particularly of men who are 25 to 55. And this makes absolute sense to me, because this is the demographic of men who don't have a lot of incentive to do these things. Okay, you expect men to go out here and study a whole bunch of years in institutions that like them in order to work a job where they can barely, pay off a house and things like this. You're going to have to do a little bit more convincing than this. Also, the family unit being as ruined as it currently is, right? There's not a whole lot of incentive. So dudes can go out here and they can get married. They can work their entire life only to get married and then get completely screwed over financially even after that. No. Guys, we're going to be leaving today's episode there. As always, make sure to leave your thoughts and your comments. Make sure you guys take care of yourselves, and I'll be seeing you all in the next episode. Peace.